Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
It's a complicated project, but a simple life. You can study whales all over the world, you can study harbor seals all over the world, but you cannot study them in silence all over the world. So we really need this sort of piece of wilderness, this untrammeled wilderness, as they say, in order to answer some of these questions.
So we've been monitoring underwater sound here in Glacier Bay since May of 2000. And the reason why we're doing that is to understand what the park is like from the perspective of a marine mammal, because marine mammals are very dependent on the natural sound environment.
If you sort of bring it back to humans, humans respond to noise in very stereotypical ways, and other mammals do the same thing. So, you know, if you go to a concert with your buddy and the music's really loud, you're going to talk at a higher pitch, you're going to talk louder, and you might have to repeat yourself. And marine mammals do the same thing if it gets noisy. So we're seeing, you know, just which of those three that they actually do. We're here on Strawberry Island for the entire summer.
We sample 8 to 12 hours a day. There'll be 2 people who are on our beach station doing scans, marking each whale in the area, 2 people who are doing focal follows from our tower, which is a temporary tower that we have set up here on Strawberry Island. And then we have 2 people who are in the kayak who are doing fine-scale acoustic sampling for harbor seals. Got a harbor seal at 23 meters.
Got it? What's our bearing?
Bearing is 5822121.
Being able to pair what an animal is saying with where the animal is saying it is an amazing data set. It's a hard data set to get. It takes a lot of work, but it can answer so many questions.
So our cruise ship right here in the background is right on time today. We have a blissful hour and a half before the cruise ship gets here where we can watch our whales in silence. And then our ship comes in, bringing with it the noise that it brings, and we watch our whales while the ship's here to see whether or not their behavior is changing. And then it's going to go up bay and bring passengers to go see the glaciers, and we are going to get that blissful quiet again to see whether or not our whales are going back to that natural behavior.
This is the computer that runs our underwater acoustic monitoring. And there's a 5-mile cable from my office that leads out to a hydrophone that's out recording live sounds in Glacier Bay. And if I turn this up a little bit louder for the moment, that's the sound of a male harbor seal roaring because it's the mating season.
Strawberry Island. Building a good field team and building some good camaraderie is really important. We have sort of these daily routines of things that we do together. So there's a schedule that we check every morning, who's gonna cook lunch that day, who's gonna cook dinner. And then every day we take a group photo. And then every day we do a daily check-in. We talk about what worked that day, what didn't work that day, and what we learned either from the island or from each other over the course of the day. Surface 900600.
Last night, there were anywhere from 8 to 10 individuals right along the kelp bed off the point. And we were trying to figure out exactly what they were doing. So as acousticians, Michelle and I got a hydrophone.
That seemed like the right thing to do.
Put the hydrophone in the water to see what was going on. Well, we dropped the hydrophone and it was so quiet. There was not a single roar.
Nothing. We heard nothing.
It was just so unusual.
One of the things we did observe yesterday was 2 large bull killer whales who had come into the area that we learned today were transient killer whales. They do come into this area to hunt harbor seals. This is a pupping ground. That's what they come in for.
Yep.
We cannot in any way, shape, or form definitively link the presence of mammal-eating killer whales with the silence of harbor seals.
No, but it is quite interesting that they happened at the exact same time. It's always an adventure on Strawberry Island. You never know what the day's gonna bring.
This morning at 5:15 in the morning, the area was just boiling with whales. I had one 15-minute scan this morning where I was literally hopping back and forth on either side of the theodolite, calling out numbers to try and get all the whales as quickly as possible. And then 15 minutes later, we couldn't find them. Aside from getting to be outside all the time, my favorite part of doing my PhD is getting to work with Leanna.
It goes both ways.
It helps when you put two minds that think differently onto the same problem.
Global ocean noise is a real problem, and there are areas of the ocean that have underwater sound from vessels so often that you could almost consider it an urban environment. Glacier Bay is a very remote area, and it was set aside as a national park in part to do scientific research. And we're privileged to be able to use it as a natural laboratory where we can better understand the impacts of underwater noise.
There are some places that act like characters in your life, and I think that a lot of Alaskans can resonate with the fact that living here is like having another family member. It's like having somebody really, really important who's sort of nudging you to be a little uncomfortable all the time and to stretch yourself all the time because it's worth it. I've lived here for almost 10 years. I've made Alaska my home, and so I'm an Alaskan by choice.
Hello everyone, thanks for sticking with us. Welcome to Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Up first tonight, I need to turn this on before it'll work. There we go. Satellite imagery showing lots of sunshine here from the Bering Sea. That patch of clouds right there has moved off, and they had nothing but sun today at St. Paul and St. George. Back northeastward here, some clouds out along the coast there, Kuskokwim Bay, in toward Bristol Bay, sunshine in the interior, allowing temperatures to warm into the, well into the 70s from anywhere away from the coastline here, right up into the northeast interior areas, and pretty good conditions all the way up on the western Arctic coast. Up through here, some pretty good clearing, more clouds down south there toward the Bering Strait, in toward St. Lawrence Island, and then a lot of good weather all the way down to the Fox Islands here. Alaska Peninsula looking really good. And then this zone of clouds right through here, that's what brought all the showers earlier today in across the Cook Inlet area, Kenai Peninsula, all the way down toward Shelikof Strait actually, and then extending back up to the northeast. And with the afternoon heating today, that triggered some thunderstorms here right on the northwestern edge of that cloud field. Right in through here, some buildups. That's where most of the strikes were occurring during the late afternoon hours, and then scattered back to the west there. And then the showers tapering off here over Cook Inlet, and some clearing, more clearing over the Copper River Basin. And then this front here, pretty good front there with gale force winds in advance of it, giving the windy conditions. Rain here from the Queen Charlottes all the way up to the north there to Yakutat, trying to spread westward. Northeast winds on the backside here starting to pick up a little bit there for Kodiak Island and the western Gulf of Alaska, but the rain staying back to the west, at least for now. But you can see this whole mass of moisture pushing northward slowly, and a little bit back to the west, but it looks like the two features here, this moisture will link up with that front eventually here over the next 24 hours or so. Otherwise, not too much going on out to the west there. Another system that's not particularly strong out over the western Aleutians, bringing some clouds and moisture in toward Adak and Atka. That'll continue through tonight. We've got this one that's currently coming across the central Aleutians there, moving to this position, really weakening, just some showers with it, and then a little bit more potent front, although still not all that strong. Maybe some small craft advisory southeasterly winds, and that's about it, with an extensive area of light rain. Areas of fog means areas of IFR all through this area back to the west. And Could be some IFR here over the Bering Sea due to extensive areas of low clouds with light wind conditions and also some fog to go along with that. And that could extend all the way up in toward the Bering Strait coastal areas with just very light northerly breezes. And then this evening, thunderstorms here, mostly just about all, well, it won't be confined only to this zone, but that's where most of the strikes will be this evening, beginning to taper off. Could get some back here to the northwest or over the western, west of the Tanana Valley there. Otherwise, we've got gale force winds coming into the eastern North Gulf Coast, extending on down the Panhandle there, that front remaining off the coast tonight, and still looking at, I believe, 40 knot southeast winds into tomorrow with occasional rain, heaviest along the outer coastline there, and then tending to become lighter here in toward the, or over toward the border. And the Arctic coast, no change, chilly central coast eastward there. Colder air coming down out of the northeast around that surface high, about 1,030 millibars, 1,029 actually on the analysis, sitting north of the Arctic there, along with an cold upper level low. So that's keeping it on the cool side up in that area. Otherwise, it's looking pretty good for tonight, as well as today here, with some scattered moisture possible, or actually areas of tonight here up over the northeast interior areas. Eastern Arctic coast could see some flurries continuing there, and that'll extend back toward the west, but that gusty east winds, offshore flow there, is going to keep it probably pretty clear right out to the coastline, maybe a little beyond, and then some more clouds here through the Bering Strait. Weak low pressure there near Kuskokwim Bay, and that'll probably trigger a few showers there, mainly over the mountainous areas and possibly off the coast, Cape Newenham back to the west a little bit. And some isolated thunderstorms. Again, the showers in the decreasing mode tonight. In fact, coming pretty good here over the 40-mile country from the Copper River Basin all the way up into the upper Yukon Valley. It's called the Brooks Range of Arctic Village, becoming partly to mostly clear. After this, there'll be mostly this evening a lingering thunderstorm, and then this front brings the wind and rain up to the North Gulf Coast areas, right to the coastline, and then that southeasterly push there. Now brings a good shot of rain actually from Kodiak Island, where there'll be some pretty good winds with that front as it approaches, as well as a good shot of rain extending northeastward there in toward the east side of the Kenai Peninsula, right up into western Prince William Sound. So Whittier, then on into Portage, and probably as far west as it goes, roughly the Chugach, and down toward maybe Girdwood and Turnagain Arm, and then down Cook Inlet there, right on the eastern or the western edge of that, but it looks like some moisture will work its way across the southern inlet in toward Kachemak Bay, Iliamna, again Kodiak, even Shelikof Strait, over to the Aleutian Range, and that's where it about cuts off with just some scattered showers. Drier northwest breezes there for the Alaska Peninsula. Fair conditions, but tonight areas of marginal VFR possible, or IFR, isolated IFR possible anywhere over the Bering Sea tonight. Of course, more extensive out here, that front coming eastward, or trying to come eastward, not really making much progress there. And we'll see for tomorrow, it inches its way to about Atka with the rainfall, and then extends back to the west, lifting north of the far western Aleutians there, so changing to showers. Otherwise, breezy conditions up here for the north slope and the passes of the Brooks Range, on out to the Arctic coast, where the gradient slackens out toward the coastline there, but still gusty winds coming around this direction. And through the Bering Strait, could see gusts tomorrow 25 to 30 miles an hour from Tin City or Wales on down to Savunga, and especially Gamble. Again, the same story here along this trough axis, afternoon, or actually daytime thunderstorms and showers developing along that. And a batch of moisture here, that leftover front remnants keeps it wet. Again, western Prince William Sound down the Kenai Peninsula. Some of that could get into Cook Inlet, possibly in the form of showers, breaking out a little bit, and then another system rotating northward here and then starting to pull back to the northwest. So that's going to keep the gale force winds in the forecast for tomorrow for the southeast coast. I believe it's 40 knots and lighter over the inside waters. Let's call it 25 knots for Clarence Strait, and then just a chance of rain as you get over toward the border. So heaviest amounts will be out along the coast again. And fair here over the Bering Sea areas, low clouds and fog. And the next front, again, not going too far, and we'll see on Wednesday that thing just dissipates there. Actually lifts northwestward here. Low pressure out over the far western Aleutians, not too strong, just quite a few showers with it, but way out toward the Komodorsky and Shimya. So the remainder of the Bering Sea here looking pretty good, really, just due to a lack of storminess rather than a presence of high pressure. So partly to mostly cloudy, light winds, areas of low clouds and fog, and then a trough here will keep a chance, possibly a chance of thunderstorms in the afternoon from the Kilbrook Mountains, possibly as far north as what I have it drawn there, and then back down across the Alaska Peninsula, looking pretty showery. Bristol Bay not all that bad from the King Salmon area over to Dillingham and northward, but farther to the south, a few more shower chances. Kodiak Island, partly to mostly kind of day with a chance of, and then mostly sunny south central Alaska. All of the interior looking really good, dry conditions, not much in the way of any shower convection going on. And then we've got that gradient up there from the, actually across the Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast. So keeping the east side cool and the central coast chilly. Better here on the west side with that offshore flow and more sunshine. But again, temperatures back into the 60s and mid 70s. And then this front hanging the precipitation up right along the coastline there. So it won't be a bad day for the eastern areas, but it looks pretty wet from roughly Mount Edgecombe, Sitka up to Elfin Cove, westward across Prince William Sound, and then some showers, possible thunderstorms into the Copper River Basin. Temperatures across the southeast coast this afternoon, 48 at Elfin Cove, lower to mid 50s everywhere else with 56 at Skagway, mid to upper 50s from Yakutat over to Cordova, and then lower 60s Seward down to Homer, 54 degrees in Kodiak this afternoon, lower 50s Kenai and Palmer, with just 49 degrees recorded at Talkeetna. Otherwise, get north of the mountains, that's a lot nicer temperature-wise, 70 degrees at Fairbanks, 72 Eagle, and some mid-70s here with 76 there at McGrath, and Hoosley 75 degrees with Tanana same temperature. Battle's 73, near 70 there for Fort Yukon, upper 20s to near 30 central eastern Arctic coast, and then near 50 out on the west side. Much nicer. Kivalina 66 degrees this afternoon, 62 in Buckland. Kotzebue just 51, 39 in Shishmaref, but Nome up to 75 degrees. And again, those 70s extending all the way down to Bethel, and then mid upper 50s there along the coast, 42 at Savunga. Pribilof's definitely some sun today at St. George with 56 degrees, just 46 at St. Paul, 52 on Alaska, mid 40s, Adak-Anatka, lower 40s Shimia, and the Alaska Peninsula 50s, just barely getting in the lower 60s there at King Salmon, but Iliamna at 65. Lows for tonight staying above 50, 50 to 55 actually here, right up the Yukon, possibly Kuskokwim River Valley areas, and then lower 50s into the central Tanana Valley. 20s North Slope and Arctic Coast, central and eastern portions, and 40s here south of the Alaska Range, of course cooler in the higher valleys of the Copper River Basin, 40s to near 50 for the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow back into the 70s here right out from the coastline, Seward Peninsula, Nome area, White Mountain eastward to the border, and then chillier, but again right around 30-ish or freezing there for the central and eastern Arctic coast. And then not too bad here southern or south of the Alaska Range, Tanana Valley. It's a big improvement from today there, up towards 70 degrees, and mostly in the 60s for the Panhandle. Flying weather, marginal VFR for the southeast coast tomorrow, and then areas of here through the south central area, and then IFR eastern Arctic coast, IFR out over the Bering Sea. And for tomorrow afternoon, we have now a band coming up here, encroaching across Prince of Wales Island, maybe as far north as Sitka, definitely Port Alexander, and then marginal VFR elsewhere, up to the North Gulf Coast, back to Kodiak Island, VFR much of the interior except the eastern Arctic coast, North Slope areas, more IFR farther out to the west, slowly advancing eastward. Passes though, Anaktuvik, good VFR throughout the day tomorrow for both Anaktuvik and Adigan, and for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR either approach, windy, wide or rainy, VFR, windy, same forecast, and for Isabel and Mentasta, looking good tomorrow, VFR. And for Tanita also, call it ceilings visibilities, possibly unlimited, maybe not, but Portage, definitely some marginal VFR, mostly on the eastern entrance. And for Chilkoot and White, occasionally marginal. Looking at the freezing levels, again, that cold upper low here, just off the coast, keeping the chance of snow and the flurries and the chilly conditions on the east side there. Otherwise, about 6,000 to 8,000 feet here in the central interior, out to where the position of the upper level ridge is there over the Seward Peninsula, cooling back to 4,000 feet over the Gulf of Alaska, then warming up to 8,000 feet down toward Dixon Entrance, and not much gradient all the way out to the far western Aleutians. And icing above about 7,000 feet here. Western Aleutians trying to stretch in toward Atka, and then icing free here for the interior, Bering Sea, and then a better possibility of some rime icing here. All of the southeast coast, especially along the coast, wrapping back up along the coastline, trying to push inland a little ways, but mostly staying offshore, except for Kodiak Island, from western Prince William Sound on down to possibly Kachemak Bay. And looking at the jet stream south of the state here, almost up to the central Aleutians, but it's where it backs around southeast at 90 knots there, pulling some moisture northward, ridging right through here, trying to hook up with that one farther to the west. 9,000 feet, strong winds along and off the southeast coast here, 55 to 65 knots, and then turning easterly at about 35 across the Gulf of Alaska. Get some divergence here, 30 to 40 knots, and then a band out into the across Togiak Bay to Nunivak Island, and pretty breezy up here across the through the Berks Range, Arctic coast, into the Koyukuk Valley, and then this band of winds mostly up into the Bering Sea there, west of the Pribilofs and north of the Aleutians. 3,000 feet, same pattern, the gradient now up into the western Bering Sea here with those 20 to 40 knot southeasterlies. Less wind here along the Aleutians, and then the stronger westerlies staying south of the chain. And then we've got the 30 knotters here coming right into Kodiak Island, and that increases 40 to 55 knots right off the southeast coast. And for turbulence up north along the Arctic coast North Slope areas, western Brooks Range, down to about maybe south of Kivalina, up to just about all of the Arctic coast. Light to isolated moderate chop below 4,000 feet. And then those gusty northerly winds resulting in some mechanical turbulence to Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island. Occasional moderate chop along the southeast coast and westward. And then also back here, Kodiak Island, southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, over to the Aleutian Range. And after the, or no, that's right, I've got to keep rolling here. So ice edge, some of this shore fast now beginning to pull off and break up, in this area here really losing any ice at all. So that's why we're carrying seas in those marine forecasts now, and forecasts are to continue to melt. And for the coastal forecast again tomorrow, full gales here on the south coast, minimum gales up to the north, turning easterly on the northern zone there. Seas running 14 to 16 feet. Small craft advisories for Clarence Strait, southeast 25, seas 6 feet. Much lighter, northeast 15 for Stevens Passage and Frederick Sound, south 15, not too bad there for Lynn Canal. And then the forecast for Wednesday, northerlies, Lynn Canal 15 knots all the way down, pushing down across Stevens Passage, and then south at 15, so much lighter wind day for Clarence Strait. Lucid gales, but small craft advisories on the south coast, east to southeast 25, seas 11 feet. Easterlies coming down to 20 knots on the north side there. Excuse me, but with seas 11 to 15 feet, small craft advisories out all along the coast. For the Prince William Sound zone, northeast of 20 tomorrow, 4-foot seas, east 25 knots, pretty uniform wind pattern here for the North Gulf Coast. 25, picking up to 30 knots there along the east side of Kodiak Island. Shelikof Strait, northeast at 30 knots, falling back to 25 knots for Kachemak Bay. Cook Inlet, northeast 20 with 4 to 5 foot seas. And then for Wednesday, no change for Cook Inlet, northeasterlies at 20, about 5 foot seas, picking up to 30 knots now for Kachemak Bay. Small craft advisory Shelikof Strait. Easterlies at 25 there for the eastern zones here on, for the zones on the east side of Kodiak Island. The Barrens easterlies at 30 knots, dropping back a tad there toward the Middleton Island area down to 25. And then Prince William Sound calling for northerlies at 20 knots with 4 foot seas. For Bristol Bay, northeast 20 tomorrow, 4 foot seas. Small craft advisories northwest, turning north on the south side of the peninsula, 25. Stronger winds, 30 knots from the northeast, Castle Cape to Sitkinak with 13 foot seas. Then for Wednesday, northwesterlies 20 to 25 knots. Again, the small craft advisories now on the south side of the peninsula there from Cape Sarachev to Sitkinak. And 20 knot winds on the north side. For the Aleutians, Fox Islands, mostly Unalaska Island here, northwest 20 to 25. And then swinging around to the southeast, coming in west in Nikolsky, 15 to 20 knots, 20 to 25 again, not all that bad for the central Aleutian areas, and then 25, Adak all the way to Shimia, where they become a little more southwesterly with 10 foot seas. Those will bend back around to the south at 25 for Wednesday, but southwest 20 turned westerly, pretty light wind day coming up for the central Aleutians. actually, and that'll extend all the way over to Unalaska Island with 15-knot winds and seas. Bering Sea side pretty slight, just 3 to 4 feet, 6 to 8 feet on the Pacific side. For the zone south of Nunivak Island, east out of Kuskokwim Bay, 20 knots, 4-foot seas, northwest 20, 4-foot seas for the Pribilofs, northerlies at 20 knots, northern Bering Sea all the way up to St. Lawrence Island, and probably stronger gusts up there toward the Bering Strait. For the Wednesday outlook, not much change there. St. Lawrence Island to the Strait north of 20, northeast 20 for St. Matthew Island, especially the island westward, becoming light and variable as you head eastward there toward the area north of Nunivak Island. And then kind of a contrast there, south of Nunivak Island, 25 knots out of the northwest with 4-foot seas, west 15 for the Pribilofs. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east winds 20 knots, falling back to 15 knots on the central coast. Then back into small craft advisories here, east 25 knots, turn northeast from Cape Beaufort on down to Cape Thompson, and then fall, fall under 20 knots from the north on down to the Bering Strait, and those diminish further on Wednesday with 15-knot winds, small craft advisories, Cape Thompson and the west side, easterlies 20 knots from the central coast to demarcation point. And for tonight, I've got a front coming northward here, good for some small craft advisory level winds, pretty gusty though with rain, possibly heavy at times, Kodiak Island, very wet conditions coming into the North Gulf Coast, western Prince William Sound, back down along and off the southeast coast there with less rain chances or rainfall amounts. Excuse me. Decreasing thunderstorms over the interior and partly to mostly cloudy with coolest conditions on the Arctic coast.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.